Now, I don't know who took the bigger L yesterday. Tottenham Hotspur, Liverpool, Atalanta, me, because I went to the barbers and asked for them to keep the length on the top and they got rid of all of it.
Allah, destroy him!
I'm never getting a haircut again. Yeah, seriously. How can I be the biggest loser of yesterday and I'm not even a Tottenham fan? But here we go, the Champions League is back, and yesterday we saw the first 4 games of the round of 16. 4 games that all had different storylines, yet all were so entertaining. And I know you guys don't want me to say it, but I think we are actually back. Not only is the Champions League back, but here I am talking about the games from yesterday today. And if you guys want to see this video for every single round until the final of the Champions League, then just leave a like on this video, and of course, let's get in to yesterday's games. And first off the bat, we have to talk about the most exciting game of the night. Newcastle versus Barcelona. You know, the only free game that was available to watch for everyone. Amazon Prime was showing this. So I thought, you know what? This is going to be an absolute banger. Free game. I don't have to go on some dodgy site with 17 different pop-ups just to watch the football game or pay £64, you know, to see the game. I'm going to watch this for free. And it was unbearable. And this was one of them games where even though the scoreline was balanced, 1-1, the game was not balanced at all. Newcastle ran riot. They looked sharper, stronger, faster, and honestly dominated Barcelona in a lot of aspects. And even though Barcelona would have opportunities to capitalize early on, they would fail to do so. But it wasn't as if Newcastle didn't have chances too. It felt like they were just making this Barcelona squad seem uncomfortable. You know, the physicality of that Newcastle midfield was overwhelming for these Barcelona players at times. And just imagine if Anthony Elanga early on was more clinical in the chances that he got. Newcastle also didn't start the game with either of their striker options. No Waltermada and no Johan Wissa. Just going to show that strikers really aren't the priority in this Newcastle system. They needed pacey wingers to get out this Barcelona defence and really put the pressure on them. Newcastle showed Barcelona what the Premier League is really like, because this is not a side that are competing for European football. Newcastle aren't having their best season yet. You know, they're going and putting the sword to Barcelona's necks and saying, you know what, we can take you down. And finally, after bundles of pressure late on in that second half, like the 86th minute, Harvey Barnes would get his goal. But in the lead up to this goal, Ronald Araujo would go down with an injury, but go down off the pitch. He would, you know, try and scoot his way onto the pitch so the start would be delayed. But ref, you know, he picked up on this. He said, what are you doing? Why are you scooting over onto the pitch? And because Araujo was still sat on the ground, Newcastle capitalized on the situation. You know, they get the ball down on that right hand side. The ball's put into the box. And guess where, you know, the goal comes from? It comes from the side where Araujo would have been defending, but it was left down to Rafinha. And Harvey Barnes, you know, he tries his best to miss this effort. It hits off his heel. Joan Garcia, you know, nearly saves it with his face, but it goes into the back of the net and it's 1-0 to Newcastle. And all seems like it's going well for Newcastle. You know, Lewis Hall has put in a man of the match performance, locking up the likes of Lamine Yamal despite him having success early on in the game. Newcastle fans were about to write this game in the history books and go to the next leg thinking they could do, you know, the double on Barcelona. However, this game would keep on going and Barcelona's newly substituted in Dani Olmo would get a chance to show some magic on the edge of the 18-yard box. He shifted the ball into the 18-yard box and actually got taken down by Malik Tau. A defender who's been having an outstanding season in the Premier League has made a mistake in the clutch moments for Newcastle, and Barcelona are given a penalty. And guess who takes it? Lamine Yamal, a guy that's been getting slandered all game, pocketed by the likes of Lewis Hall. He takes his chance, puts the ball in the back of the net, burying Aaron Ramsdale, and he celebrates shamelessly. You know, that's what we like to see. This is real football, and it leads into a second leg that all eyes will be watching. Next up, we have to talk about a humiliation ritual that went down, featuring Atletico Madrid and Tottenham Hotspur. This was one of the worst Champions League performances that I have ever witnessed, and that is coming from a die-hard Arsenal fan. You know, I remember getting duppied by every single team that we came across, you know, during a period of time, whether it was a Barcelona, a Bayern, but never did I ever experience this sort of humiliation. And now that I think about it, we did. Yeah, Spurs in this game fully collapsed, and I'm not just talking about metaphorically, I'm talking about literally. Goalkeeper collapsing, Van der Ven collapsing. I don't know what their boots were made out of when going into this game. Are you wearing AstroTurf boots on a grass pitch? It doesn't make sense. Within like 6 minutes, the Tottenham goalkeeper Kinski slips, and the opportunity is given to an Atletico Madrid player, and eventually Marcus Llorente puts the ball in the back of the net. And Kinski, he's not Tottenham's regular goalkeeper. We all know Vicario, he's not really that good either. But newly appointed Igor Tudor, Tottenham Hotspur's manager, would just throw in Kinski into a round of 16 draw against Atletico Madrid. Thinking that this guy is going to be the saviour. And of course, it didn't go to plan. Slipping within 6 minutes and showing shades of a prime XQC at the Sidemen charity match. And then again, just like 10 minutes later, another slip at the back. It's Van der Ven this time, and Atletico Madrid capitalise again. And just a minute after that Van der Ven mistake, even 45 seconds, Kinski, the Tottenham goalkeeper, makes another mistake. This guy was really pulling out man of the match, Lord Karius, comparisons. Eventually, it even gets worse. This guy gets subbed off. Like after this goal went in, Igor Tudor said, back to basics. Vicario getting goal. And you can't help but feel bad for this guy. This is a young goalkeeper being thrown in at a stage that he wasn't really ready for, and then being hooked before half time. It's a humiliation ritual not only for the squad but also for him as an individual, and this might be something that affects his career in the long run. But I do want to know, did he get bribed before this game? Or did he have a head concussion or something? When the finer details are lined out and we find a bit more about this investigation, because I feel like he got a bribe. A shady character gave him a bribe before the game, because there is no way. And by 20 minutes in, it would get even worse, because Vicario couldn't help but, add to the misery. Even though he does stop the opportunity, it goes in via, the goal line. We know. Lenormand gets his goal. It's 4-0 to Atletico. And Tottenham fans, they're screaming at their TVs.
Look at these cowards. Spine. Ah! Yo. First and last. We're done. What the f?
But by the 25th minute, Pedro Porro reinstills some hope. Let's go again. Let's go again. Tottenham fans, grew up in Tottenham. Let's go. Pedro Porro. It was false hope. This is like when you just give the controller to your older brother and say, please, just get me a goal, give me the pad back, and I'll take it from there. And then in the 54th minute, the best goal in the game, in my opinion, comes from a Tottenham corner. They are setting up this corner. Everyone is in the box, and they go short. And then they go short again, and then they whip the ball into the box. Eventually, it's cleared out. The ball's cleared. Griezmann, first touch, first time. Brilliant bit of play. Gives it on a lovely plate to Julian Alvarez, and he's in a straight race with the Tottenham backline, and he wins that race and slots it into the far left corner of the goal, making it 5-1. The finish is beautiful, but the assist by Griezmann, he just gets better and better as the years go on. Look at that quality right there. He doesn't get talked about enough, but I'm talking about him right now. In the 75th minute, Spurs would still be in it. Solanke gets his goal via an Oblak mistake this time, but it was all too late. And at this point for Tottenham fans, when do you just call it a day? This is a club that are struggling to even stay up in the Premier League. They've brought in a manager that has no Premier League experience. They're in the Champions League fighting for their life for no reason. That second leg next week, do you even go out there and field 11? Or do you just start the youngsters and focus on the Premier League? Do you sack Igor Tudor and bring in a Premier League proven manager that can get you up the table and get you out of this zone? Because let's be real, there's like 9 games left of the Premier League season. There is a manager out there that is more than capable of saving this Spurs squad. Who else is out there? Maybe there isn't many options. And from one humiliation ritual to another, this time we go to Atalanta. They faced off against Bayern Munich and lost 6-1. Bayern Munich were horrifyingly good, because this game didn't just look like a big win. It looked like a team announcing their name on the big stage. You know, round of 16, Bayern Munich are back. They're coming like this is the 2020 season and they still got prime Lewandowski and Hansi Flick. But this is not 2020 anymore. It is 2026 and Bayern Munich are killing teams away from home. From the off in this game, Bayern Munich just seized control. You may not have the ball, Atalanta. It doesn't matter if we're at your stadium. Give us the ball. The likes of Luis Diaz would have an opportunity and eventually Serge Gnabry would set up Stanisic for the opener on the night. 10 minutes later, Upamecano gets the ball and he says, you know what, let me go for a little drive upfield. He brings the ball forward towards the 18-yard box but passes it off to Michael Olise. And Olise cuts in on that left foot and almost looks inevitable. We all knew what was about to happen and it happened. He bends that ball into the back of the net and eventually it's 2-0. He's given me shades of Iron Robin and Bayern Munich have finally found a right winger replacement that can, you know, kind of give shades of that inevitability off that right hand side. And Michael Olise is a player that I have talked about for many years now. You know, whether it's on the second channel predicting that he would have, you know, a big Champions League run, or even on this channel, my right wingers ranking video where I ranked him at a star winger when he was still at Crystal Palace. Maybe I have infinite ball knowledge, you know, infinite domain. Jujutsu Kaisen style. And then just a couple minutes later from the goal kick, Olise gives the ball to Gnabry and Gnabry finishes. And let's just talk about Gnabry because he's going very under the radar in this Bayern Munich squad, pivoting from a winger into a central attacking midfielder. He has played really well this season and I'm kind of upset because I've recorded, you know, a central attacking midfielder video and I didn't include Gnabry. But I feel like he does deserve some sort of praise because he's been able to upkeep with this Bayern Munich squad that is ever changing, with an attacking front line built with 3 different guys that weren't there 2 years ago or 3 years ago. He's been a guy that's been there since the 2020 squad with Hansi Flick and has stayed in this squad and still found a role. And I swear, after 3-0, Bayern Munich just had so many opportunities. This game could have been 15-0. It was incredible, whether it was Luis Diaz getting the ball or Nicholas Jackson with multiple opportunities to score. Just imagine if Harry Kane was on the pitch. But in the second half, Nicholas Jackson would finally get his goal via a little flick on by Luis Diaz. And then in the 63rd minute, I think my favourite goal on the night, it's Alphonso Davies who got brought on, I think it was like in the 45th minute, and he's driving up the pitch. You're seeing shades of a prime Alphonso Davies from a few years ago. He's looking at his best again. He drives, gives the ball to Michael Olise. All he needs is a body feint, cuts inside on his left foot and whips it left corner again. And by the 66th minute for Bayern, everyone was getting in on the action. You know, Musiala had come on and got his goal too. I think it was via Olise who crossed the ball in. And despite Atalanta ruining the clean sheet for this Bayern defense, they were solid. You know, they would win the game 6-1. And they wouldn't even have to call upon a Harry Kane or a Lennart Karl who have been so good for them this season. And I think honestly Bayern Munich looks so ruthless in this game, and that's what made me kind of stand up and say, oh, this is a serious team. You know, this is not the same team that Arsenal beat, you know, in the Champions League phase. They look totally different. Their dynamic seems to have changed. They've upped the pace a little bit more. They've become more aggressive on the press. And it just goes to show that anything can happen in this Champions League. And the final game of the day and the last humiliation ritual that we have to talk about is Galatasaray beating Liverpool 1-0. Now, this wasn't really a surprise for me because Galatasaray already beat Liverpool earlier on in the Champions League stages, and it was a similar game to that. You know, I think in that game Osimhen would get the only goal via a penalty, but there would be multiple opportunities in that game, and Osimhen fluffed his lines multiple times in that game. And in this game he did the exact same thing. He's one of the most chaotic strikers in football, but his lack of just finishing the ball in the back of the net is why I can't put him up there as a world-class striker, even though he's brilliant. He causes so many problems, and even for Galatasaray's goal in the game, it's his header on that, you know, allows the header to go in, because it's Mario Lemina who finishes off this opportunity that Osimhen gets from the cross. But even before this 7th minute goal by Galatasaray, Liverpool were given an opportunity on a plate to, you know, steal the lead early, and I think it was fluffed by Wirtz. He had 2 opportunities in this game to really just either claw the lead back or get the first goal in the game, and he fluffed both of his lines. And from Galatasaray going 1-0 up early on, it would just be a tale of 2 halves, with Liverpool getting their fair share of opportunities. I remember Ekitike going 1-on-1 and just again not clinical enough, not experienced enough at this level. You can't do it just yet. But also Galatasaray had multiple opportunities and even got a disallowed goal that shouldn't have been disallowed. You know, Osimhen, the fraudulent allegations would have gone out the window if this goal had counted, but it didn't for some reason. Because a player was offside in the build up to the goal, but he wasn't even involved in the play leading up to the goal. You know, Galatasaray fans should be, rioting, but eventually karma would restore itself and Liverpool would get a goal, but it would be ruled out. But we also have to give a lot of credit to Galatasaray because, they make it so difficult for a team to come to their home and try and get something from a game. And of course, going into that second leg against Liverpool, they're going to look at it and say, you know what, if we just park the bus and maybe get an opportunity on the counter-attack, we can do this Liverpool team over. But essentially my thoughts from the first 4 fixtures of the round of 16 are that humiliation rituals are real, and these games were so exciting to say the least, and I picked the worst one to watch live. Now, I don't know how the Champions League round of 16 keeps doing this, but yesterday's games were even better than the ones the day before. Like, this competition is genuinely the pinnacle of football, and by the pinnacle I mean the pinnacle, the tippy top of football, because it looks like a lot of Prem heads just got exposed. Football fans that claim the Premier League is so far ahead of the rest of the European leagues just got exposed, because in the last 2 days not one English side won their first leg. So without further ado, let's dive into the Wednesday round of 16 games in the Champions League. Now we start off in Spain, where Real Madrid took on Manchester City, and for the first few minutes of the game, football fans were thinking, Manchester City were dominating possession. This is going to be another one of these Manchester City away days. But Real Madrid, Arbeloa and particularly Valverde had other ideas, because it didn't even matter if Manchester City had the ball at times. Real Madrid were going to be direct. Forget all this build-up play, we're going straight to your goal and we are going to score. And on 20 minutes, Courtois would send the ball forward into a channel in which Fede Valverde was exploiting, running in behind Nico Riley. He would pace it past Nico O'Reilly and Donnarumma would try and come out and stop him, but he would get rounded. Valverde goes round the keeper in slow motion, finishes it, and it's now 1-0. The mood has completely switched, and this game seems to be Real Madrid's. I have never seen a player play so good yet still not look like he's actually controlling the football. Valverde is just a brute force, and honestly, this game that he had yesterday will go down as generational. Well, that's if Real Madrid follow it up in the second leg. And it wasn't just this goal, because he would follow it up with another one. After Vini Jr. had slipped him in, Valverde would bury the ball into the bottom corner, looking like a prime Uruguayan striker, but he is not a striker. Last season he was playing right back. And this is the point in the game where Manchester City just had no control over it. Real Madrid had just upped the ante. Valverde was doing a 10-man press with 1 man. He was going into battle on his horse into an army of hundreds by himself. But slowly but surely, the rest of the Real Madrid players said, you know what, we gotta go with this guy. Madrid were direct, aggressive and unbothered by Manchester City having small spells of possession, despite them actually having chances to do something. And then came a moment that everyone will remember looking back on this game. After a bit of build-up play in the 42nd minute, Brahim Diaz would float a ball into the path of an oncoming Valverde inside the 18-yard box, by the way. And standing in the way of Valverde was Mark Guehi, preparing to take out the ball, the man, and just get this ball as far away from the goal as possible. But again, Valverde would somehow wriggle himself out of this situation, flicking the ball over the head of Guehi and then finishing the ball into the back of the net. A ridiculous goal by Valverde, and that is a first half hat-trick against Manchester City in a round of 16. And then going into that second half, Manchester City just never really looked like they were going to do anything. It actually looked like Real Madrid were going to capitalise even more and get a fourth. With Vini Jr. winning a penalty and ultimately missing it, no one even really cares that he missed, because he had an amazing game. Valverde had already won the game in the first half, and Real Madrid fans were happy. There would be a moment late on in the game where a Real Madrid youngster at the back would make a little mistake, and Nico O'Reilly going to press him would lead to the ball exploding toward Courtois, and he would make a reflex save that honestly, that goal single-handedly could have, maybe sparked something. But Courtois just showing again why he's such a world-class goalkeeper and a generational goalkeeper, someone that should be looked at as one of the greats of all time. And of course Valverde was the face of this win, but Courtois was amazing, and Vinny Jr. for me, in the Champions League sometimes is unstoppable. He was showing some of these Manchester City players that you can't control him on his day. He will just push you off the ball, he will just go around you, it does not matter. But Manchester City and Pep Guardiola looked so fraudulent coming out of this game, even going into it with the team that they laid out on the table, starting Semenyo in the number 10, not playing Nico Riley in the midfield where he's been playing there for most of the season, randomly starting the likes of Doku and Savinho together. These guys haven't been playing week in and week out. I know, we've been watching Premier League football. This is not the Manchester City lineup week in and week out. But somehow he just threw this lineup together and said, what, have fun. I have no clue what Guardiola was thinking going into this game. And also, the Haaland stuff. We have to address Haaland because number one, he was ghostly in the game. He was locked up by the likes of Rudiger and Huijsen. But without being locked up, he wouldn't have been a threat. And it's not like me to criticize Haaland because we all know that he's a world-class striker. But sometimes in these Champions League fixtures that we've seen, please name one game that Haaland has had for Manchester City in the Champions League where he's actually contributed and did things by himself, showing that he is a lethal world-class striker. I've never made these claims about Haaland, and another game has shown me why I have not. He hasn't really done anything in this game, and he's one of them players that if you don't play to suit, you're not going to get anything out of this game. But Haaland, if he's got no service, he can't create the service for himself. And from one blockbuster to another, we have to talk about Bodø Glimt versus Sporting. Now, despite not many people watching this game live, Bodø Glimt continue to, defy expectations in this competition, beating Sporting in dominant fashion. And this is a Sporting side that are currently second in the Portuguese league behind Porto. They're not struggling this season, yet Bodø Glimt played them off the park. Their breakthrough came in the 32nd minute after winning a penalty. Fett would put it home. And yes, I don't know if I'm the only one that thought this, but I thought this guy's name was actually Fent. This was a huge moment, but the momentum was already swaying towards Bodø throughout the entire game. They were home on their 4G pitch, and when they're on their 4G pitch, these players are looking like they're playing, power league, your five-a-side. They've got the chemistry, they're no-look passing, but still they're able to make use of it and play teams off the park. And right before halftime, Blomberg would have the ball in the back of the net, and they would go into halftime 2-0 up. And despite Sporting having chances in that second half, Bodø would still be relentless and say, what, we're not even done. And with their third goal going in the 70th minute, this tie looks like it's wrapped up. And for me, one of my favourite parts of this Bodø Glimt side has to be Jens Petter Haug. Even though he didn't score in this game, he number one contributed, but he's just always a threat when he's on the ball and even the runs that he makes off it. Bodø would have 5 big chances compared to Sporting's 0, and again, it looks like this tie is completely done. Just imagine if this Bodø side make it even further into this competition. Who knows what they can achieve. Now next up, we go into a fixture that I actually had to watch back. Yes, I had to pay for Discovery Plus just to watch this game back. Please, like the video now. And of course, I'm talking about PSG versus Chelsea, a rematch of the Club World Cup final, and a game that was much anticipated because we all saw it and I even made a video about it. Chelsea played PSG off the park in the Club World Cup final. The likes of João Pedro, Cole Palmer just dispatching these PSG players and leaving them in the dust. And maybe it's because these PSG players were burnt out from winning the Champions League and every competition last year. But still, 1% chance, 99% faith. And Chelsea, even in this Champions League campaign, had already turned over the likes of Barcelona. So going into a game against PSG, people were actually predicting that Chelsea were going to get a result. And you know what? I'll put my hands up and say this. Chelsea did okay. This game was absolutely chaotic. With PSG starting brightly, it would actually be Bradley Barcola that broke the deadlock and also broke his goal drought. But Chelsea did not falter because PSG, they like to commit a lot of players forward. So of course, on the transition, they can be caught out. And with Chelsea having a lot of pacey players that can exploit these areas, they did so. With Enzo Fernandez finding Malo Gusto and him putting the ball into the back of the net. But you know what? What's going on with the PSG keeper? That is not the best save, and this was definitely a stoppable shot. I don't even think Malo Gusto hit this properly. But the real question is, why is Malo Gusto in this much space? You know, throughout this entire game, I was just questioning PSG's defense. You know, they come up against another side that are a bit more ruthless, like themselves. If they played themselves, they would get destroyed. And yeah, but despite Chelsea making it 1-1, PSG and the Ballon d'Or winner Dembele would respond. With a taste of Chelsea's own medicine, PSG would hit them with a transition, and Dembele honestly would just show the Ballon d'Or wasn't a fluke. The Ballon d'Or wasn't a fluke. Look at this finish, going one way, going the other way, send him to the shops and put it into the bottom left corner. But still, even going into this halftime 2-1 up, you know, this tie just felt like something was brewing. And again, PSG would be caught out in them wide areas, with Pedro Neto capitalizing on a little bit of a misplaced pass or just a misplaced control, and he's now driving at this PSG 18-yard box. He would then set up Enzo Fernandez, who would make it 2-2 in the game. And then you're thinking, this is, an opportunity for Chelsea. Maybe everyone was right, Chelsea are going to win this. But then came a moment that just changed everything. And of course, the goalkeeper wants to be the main character again. How many games in the Champions League, or even this season as a whole, have goalkeepers just ruined the game entirely by themselves? And in the 74th minute, Chelsea's keeper Jorgensen would just give the ball away. A loose pass that would eventually be punished by Vitinha in nonchalant fashion, just dinking it over the keeper and just staring him in the eyes, and you're just on the floor. Why did you even do that for? And let's just discuss this goalkeeper situation, because Chelsea's main man is not Jorgensen. Who's Jorgensen? Is that a yogurt that you buy at Sainsbury's? We all know their goalkeeper, Sanchez, with the bald head and the beard, and he was actually the goalkeeper that started in the Club World Cup final where Chelsea won against PSG. And in my opinion, a lot of the reason why Chelsea was so good on the transition is because Sanchez was in goal and his distribution was incredible, rapid, and he's like a midfielder at times. But this guy, Jorgensen, get back into the Sainsbury's aisles, bro. You're a yogurt, natural, fat-free. And I think this moment that Jorgensen just gave the ball away turned the tie. It just shifted everything, and you felt it while watching the game. With the Chelsea players realizing they can't rely on their own goalkeeper, they just lost it. And to capitalize on this situation, in steps a man in shining armor, Kvicha Kvaratskhelia, a guy that's been, kind of out of form recently, or out of the squad for PSG, not really starting a bunch of games. He was finally called upon and said to Luis Enrique, you need to shush and start me more often. Because from there, it was individual brilliance by Kvicha Kvaratskhelia that just took over this game. In the 86th minute, he would make it 4-2 with a direct run from the left-hand side, cutting in and whipping it into that top right corner. And then to push this lead even further into stoppage time, he would get another goal after the ball was cut across the box. Just a few minutes and PSG had just taken Chelsea completely out of this tie, because I don't think a lot of us think that Chelsea have what it takes to really do anything, even at Stamford Bridge. Do you really think PSG are not going to score at Stamford Bridge? Let's be honest. But all in all, as a Chelsea fan and a Liam Rose Senior fan, you can take some positives, and it was very back and forth, a chaotic game that could have gone either way, but due to individual mistakes and also individual brilliance, that's where you got a tie that ended 5-2. And lastly, we got to briefly talk about probably the worst game of all of the round of 16s so far. Bayer Leverkusen versus Arsenal. And am I happy to say that this was the most boring game of all of the round of 16s as an Arsenal fan? No. With Arsenal having one or two promising moments early on in the game, they couldn't capitalize and put themselves 1-0 up. And it was like Arsenal didn't actually expect Leverkusen to have this much conviction in their play. Their main man up top, Kone, is like 19 years old and was just, bodying the likes of Gabriel at the back. And in all honesty, going into half-time, a lot of people would have said that Leverkusen looked like the better team. And instantly after half-time, literally from a kickoff, they kicked the ball up, they eventually win a corner, and from the corner, Andrich scores. What a way for Arsenal to concede, conceding from a corner, even though that's probably their favourite method of scoring. And then from that moment, Arsenal tried to up the pace, up the tempo. The likes of Saka had to get pulled off the pitch. Madueke was inserted, a bit more pace on that right hand side, and eventually he wins a penalty. And despite this decision kind of looking fraudulent, when you really take a step back and you realise, contact was made, Madueke did make the most of it, but it is a penalty. And formerly a Bayer Leverkusen man, Kai Havertz, would step up, put the ball in the back of the net and make it 1-1. Coming out of this game, there are some questions to be asked of not only Arsenal but also the Premier League sides. Arsenal did look shaky, having to take off a star man Saka in a game like this, taking him off at like the 59th minute is insane, especially because just a season ago you wouldn't think that this would be the case. But yeah, those were the Wednesday games of the round of 16 in the Champions League, and honestly these games have been absolute cinema. You know, they just keep getting better, and I think next week we are going to see a bunch of different comebacks. Despite a lot of people saying that all the ties are over, I don't think so. You know, I am someone that has a lot of hope going into next week. Now, if you thought the first legs of the round of 16 were good, then you didn't watch yesterday's games, because the second legs of the Tuesday games in the round of 16 commenced yesterday, and some of them were absolutely generational. And of course, we're going to start off with a game that symbolized so much more. With Manchester City playing Real Madrid after already being 3-0 down on aggregate, there was somehow still belief, quotes murmuring about that Manchester City were going to pull off the remontada. And to be fair, even though the remontada didn't happen, Manchester City did put up a fight. Manchester City put the pedal on the gas and started going at this Real Madrid side, but they just didn't have the cherry on top, the finishing touch, the goal, the breakthrough. And despite Manchester City playing so well, they couldn't get the first goal in the game. And you know, in these comeback remontada ties, the first goal matters quite a lot. And then came the moment that pretty much ripped the hopes and dreams of every single Manchester City fan. Around the 20th minute, Vinny Jr.'s attack would eventually lead to Bernardo Silva clearing the ball off the line using his arm. And I can't lie, when I was watching this, I didn't really think that this was a handball. But then they slowed it down, the VAR took control, and then we're seeing Bernardo Silva pull a cheeky one. And of course, in that kind of situation, it's a red card. Deads the entire game for Manchester City. Vinny Jr. gets a penalty, sticks it away, and now there's nothing that Manchester City really can do, because after playing so badly in that first leg, there's no way that they can come back from 4 goals to 0. They weren't as clinical as needed, and eventually they would realise that this red card was actually a big problem. And even despite getting one back on the 41st minute via Haaland, it still wasn't enough. They just kept getting shut out by this Real Madrid defence, and Haaland looked like he didn't even have his shooting boots on once again. Despite scoring in the game, he would have other opportunities that usually you would think, okay, you're going to put this in the back of the net. And whilst this Manchester City side had already buried their hopes, Real Madrid had just finished them off right at the last minute in the game. And with Vinny Jr. scoring a last minute winner via a Tchouaméni first time cross, they will see themselves probably play Bayern Munich in the next round of the Champions League, and Manchester City have completely crashed out. This might be their worst week in football for a while. You know, they've crashed out of the title race, it seems like. They've crashed out of the Champions League. They have a Carabao Cup final against Arsenal that going into it, they are looking like they're going to get smoked. And I know there are some things to take from this game for Manchester City, like Doku was very positive. Cherki was positive. Bernardo Silva, this brother is tired. He's tired. Even the red card just was silly. Kusanov was pretty good, but still, the elder statesman, you know, Ruben Diaz, was not leading by example. He was slipping and sliding on the floor. I think all of the more mature players in this Manchester City side, they're not up to standard anymore. You know, the old guard are actually fading out of this squad, leading to Pep Guardiola having to call upon these younger players, and now he can't rely upon, you know, a Doku. He can't rely upon a Cherki. He can't even really rely upon Haaland in these big games. Whereas, you know, you look at the prime Manchester City era, you had players that were guaranteed big performances in these big sort of games. But you know, all of that's gone now. Pep Guardiola's probably rubbing his bald head and thinking about a holiday destination when he resigns from Manchester City at the end of the year. And who will replace him? Because we cannot replace him.
We cannot replace him. We cannot.
And I think in recent years it's just shown, with multiple losses to a Real Madrid side that has been going through turmoil themselves. Time and time again, it just seems like they're just being out individual brillianced. You know, because Vinny Jr. was great in this game, scoring, you know, a couple goals. But when you look at the misses that he had in the game too, he could have scored 4 goals. So yeah, Real Madrid are through to the next round, 5-1 on aggregate. And let's talk about the next game. And this next game was something else, because nobody, I mean nobody, predicted what was about to happen. Now, last week we saw Bodø Glimt put the sword to the necks of Sporting CP and say, you know what, we're taking all your money. Empty your pockets right now. You're coming to our home, you know, our Power League looking stadium, 4G. You know, you don't wear metal studs on this one. You're not allowed. It's against the rules. You're coming to our home ground and we're gonna pump you 3-0. And that's exactly what happened. These Bodø Glimt players put on an absolute show. You know, they were dizzying, they were dazzling, and they absolutely spanked a Portuguese side that are currently second in their division. And going into this second leg, people were already thinking about the Bodø Glimt story. Football YouTube essay writers were probably salivating at the mouth, you know, writing up a script about Bodø Glimt being the most underrated side in the world. And then they went to Sporting Lisbon, the home of the green and white stripes, and a team that used to harbour the talents of Cristiano Ronaldo. This is football legacy. You really thought that this yellow banana looking kit team were gonna come to Lisbon and do the dirty work? Hell no. Well, I didn't expect this either, but I'm just trying to do this for dramatic effect.
Good joke. But I don't like jokes.
I like the video, by the way. For Bodø Glimt fans, it did not go to plan, because on the 34th minute, Inacio would get the first goal back for Sporting. It was relentless pressure, aggressive play from these Sporting attackers. Like a swarm of killer bees, they were just suffocating their prey. Sporting would then get a favourable penalty decision, and Luis Suarez would put the ball in the back of the net, and he's just tied it up on aggregate. And this Luis Suarez might actually be a late bloomer, because throughout this game he was dangerous, with not only him but also Trincao having multiple opportunities throughout the 90 minutes and the entire 120 minutes. Then Max Araujo's goal in the 91st minute would seal, you know, the comeback. They had just done it. Limbs everywhere. And this goal had me mouth open, you know, hands on head, thinking, what is going on? And then it got even better for Sporting fans, because in the 120th minute, on a bit of transitional play, Nel would get the ball passed to him on the right side, and he would just blast it at the near post of the goal, roof for the net. He's just sealed it. 5-0. Sporting had defied all odds and beat Bodø Glimt, who shouldn't have even been in this position. Let's just talk about that. It's been a tough couple of games. You know, the sides that they have beat, you should be ashamed. But also applaud this side of Yellow Bananas for getting this far in the competition. But also applaud this Sporting side. That was honestly a massacre. It could have been 8-0. Some of the opportunities that this Sporting side had, it was immense. They were fluid in attack. They looked potent. And honestly, going into that game against Arsenal that they would eventually play, they're going to have to be on their tip-top behaviour. But let's be wrong, I don't think Arsenal are going to fail to beat Sporting. Next, we headed over to Stamford Bridge for the sequel of Chelsea's Chainsaw Massacre. They were going into a second leg being 5-2 down. Within 6 minutes, the PSG goalkeeper Safinov pumps the ball forward and it goes towards Kavica Kvaratskhelia, but he's getting marked by Sarr. Now you're thinking Sarr's a big guy, you know, he's going to hold off Kavica, get the ball away, and what's going on? Kavica has just bypassed Sarr, you know, he's phased through him like security at a football game. He's able to wriggle round him, hold him off, get in front of him, and finish the ball in the back of the net, making it 1-0 within 6 minutes. It's possibly the worst way that Chelsea would have even imagined to start the game, and they've done it. And then it just gets even more humiliating for Chelsea, because best midfielder in the world, Moises Caicedo, you know, he's trying to play a ball, it gets intercepted, and now PSG is suddenly on a transitional counter-attack. The ball is brought forward and eventually given to Hakimi, who plays a first-time ball into the path of Bradley Barcola. And Barcola executes one of the finest goals that I've seen this season. With his touch leading to the ball being on a bounce, he half volleys it into the top corner. It's honestly an outrageous goal. You know, the technique to put it into that top bins whilst the ball is still falling and bouncing, you know, it's out of this world. But if you're watching this game, you would hear the commentary and think, bro, did he just score a tap-in and was it offside? Because it was completely biased. It was disgusting to even hear the lack of hype behind a goal like this. Even the Kavica one, you would at least expect something.
Allah, destroy him!
And now within 15 minutes, Chelsea are 2-0 down. You know, it can't get worse, can it? Oh yes, it can. It can get worse. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Because PSG will score again and it will get ruled out. But in my head, it went in. And it's not like Chelsea had completely zero chances in this game, because there were multiple times where they had a couple shots on goal, but PSG's keeper, Safinov, he decided to step up. He's been subject to a lot of abuse online, you know, saying that he's not worthy of being the PSG main man. But no, today he proved people wrong. Safinov, you must get some praise. I praise you. I praise you. I praise praise you. I have never seen a goalkeeper with a ponytail pull off stops like this, bro. This is crazy. In the second half, Chelsea would try and fight back, but they had already got jumped. You know, they're in the middle of the huddle on the floor. You know, you ain't getting up from that. You know, just stay on the floor. Like, you know, possums. Possums play dead so that the predator will eventually just get bored and leave them. That's what Chelsea should have done. Because on the 60th minute, it would just get even worse. You know, ball goes down that left-hand side. Eventually, it gets passed across the box. And Seni Mayulu, left foot, whips it top right corner. And honestly, no one even reacted. Commentators not reacting. The PSG players aren't reacting. Mayulu's overjoyed. But throughout the entire game, by the way, you're hearing just a whistle. So you don't even know, is it the ref whistling? Did this goal count? It went on through the entire game. It was so annoying. I had to just mute the stream. But yeah, 3-0. You know, and as a lot of Arsenal fans would know, 8-2. You know, I would 8-2 be a Chelsea fan. And PSG will eventually face the winner of Galatasaray and Liverpool. And if they play like they did against Chelsea, I'm sure that they can hand any of them teams a disasterdly, you know, defeat. Finally, we get into my favorite game of the night, Arsenal versus Bayer Leverkusen, which ended 2-0. And going into this game, a lot of people had doubts because Arsenal would go to Germany and draw 1-1 with a performance that lacked that aggressive, you know, lethal ability to just finish off a team. Arsenal showed that they did have a couple weaknesses, but bringing it back to home, you know, you're bringing it back to the Emirates. This is a fortress, to say the least, hosting the brilliant abilities of these Arsenal players. And for once this season, I was enjoying it. Bro, I was watching this game with a smile on my face at times, thinking, what? Is this Arsenal? Oh my days, we were playing great football. Throughout the game, it just seemed like this whole team was involved in attacking this Bayer Leverkusen backline. They were putting on the pressure, leading the horses into battle and saying, yeah, we're coming for you. And honestly, they would have scored a lot sooner if it wasn't for the brilliance of Jans Blaswich. If you need a goalkeeper, check out Leverkusen's keeper Blaswich. Yeah, he was stopping shots like a man possessed, and of course Arsenal have a man possessed as well, David Raya, who also pulled off some big saves in this game too. But eventually it would happen. Arsenal would break the deadlock. On the 35th minute, after a bit of back and forth, you know, you give me the ball, I'll give you the ball would eventually land with Eze. And with the ball bouncing in front of him, he would volley it into the top left corner of the goal. And honestly, you blink and you wouldn't see it. This ball was hit at 1 billion miles per hour. And that's a fact. I actually calculated it when the ball went into the back of the net. So make sure you leave a like, because that's, you don't get them calculations everywhere. You don't get them everywhere. 100 miles per hour shot. And then I'm looking at the stream with the volume down thinking, wait, did it get called offside? Why is he not celebrating? And why is he grabbing the middle of his shirt? And then I realized he's trying to act nonchalant. Yeah? How can you not act nonchalant? You're not even grabbing the right thing. You know, I love you, Eberiche Eze, but this one, you got to go to you have to look down before you do that sort of stuff. You know, you lost all aura with that. And Trossard would look at that and say, nah, let me get mine. You know, he would try a shot, it would not go in, and he would look tired as always. But eventually, in that second half, Arsenal would get their second, and it would be Declan Rice, a man that was honestly playing like, you know, this guy he can be the best midfielder in the world at some occasions. And in this game, he was showing it. He was up and down that pitch. And eventually, 62nd minute, he gets the ball, touches it, you know, after it's coming down in the air. And then he just whips it into that bottom right corner. He was amazing. This Arsenal squad was amazing. Isn't it funny how nobody is really talking about Gyökeres no more? As he once was a flop. You know, even I was saying it. Oh, is Gyökeres the real deal? Can he live up to expectations? Now, no one's really questioning it. He's put in a great performance yesterday with build-up play, link-up. And, you know, he's getting into the channels a lot more. Havertz had a cameo and he was great. I think all the Arsenal squad in this game were just immense, and I think it was a more free-flowing style of football that we hadn't seen in a while as Arsenal fans, and especially as someone that watches us week in and week out every single game that I can. But when it comes to the Wednesday second leg ties in the round of 16, I don't even know where to start, mainly because there was just a bunch of goals and also a bunch of moments that we have to talk about. On one side you had Uncle Salah, you know, finally redeeming himself on the second to last day of Ramadan.
I stopped eating at 6 p.m. yesterday, and I ate again at 6 p.m. today.
And on the other side, you had Newcastle absolutely getting destroyed by a Barcelona side that still don't even look that good. So yeah, let's just dive straight into this. And first off, we have to head over to Spain, because this was one of those games where you had to be locked in for the entire 90 minutes to really understand what was going on. A very harsh game for Newcastle because it was two sides with two very different stories, with Barcelona and specifically Rafinha capitalizing on Newcastle mistakes early on in the game. But Newcastle seemed to never back down. They were coming like a honey badger in this game, and the main guy that was representing Newcastle, Anthony Elanga. On the 15th minute, Anthony Elanga would tie up the game, and you're thinking, okay, this is not going to be an easy one for Barcelona. Coming into this game, it was 1-1 on aggregate, but the general consensus from football fans is that when Newcastle go over to, Barcelona and they have to face them at their home, yeah, it's a long day. I can't lie, they're not coming out unscathed. But Anthony Elanga had just sparked some hope into Newcastle fans, and they were ready for a historic night. But then just 2 minutes later, it's a set piece, a ball across the box, and it's Bernal who taps it home. Now it's 2-1. But Newcastle weren't going away. They were like a bad rash. Yamal tries a little back kill. I think it's Lewis Hall that picks up on the ball, gives it onto the left hand side. The ball gets put across the box, and again, Anthony Elanga. In a game against Barcelona, he's turning up where it really matters. That goal makes it 3-3, and again, Newcastle fans are back. And with Barcelona missing a few big chances after that, Newcastle were gasping for air. Bring me to that, the changing rooms, bro. Please, give me a half time. I need a little pick me up. Give me a Red Bull. But in stoppage time of that first half, Lamine Yamal outside the football into that right channel. The ball gets put across the box, and Rafinha looks like he's about to tap it in, but no. Kieran Trippier, you ain't going nowhere. Come here. He doesn't even do this subtly. It's obvious. It's a penalty. Rafinha gives it to Lamine Yamal. Lamine Yamal puts it into the back of the net, and the momentum is switched. Newcastle now will go into a second half in a completely different mindset, with Barcelona actually having more hope. And I don't know what Hansi Flick said to these Barcelona players at half time. He must have been like, are you not entertained? On some Gladiator Maximus, stand up speech, getting his troops ready to come out into that second half. He must have been sweating, spitting at players like this was crazy, because they came out and then they ran the show. Just 5 minutes from the restart, Newcastle got sliced open, and Fermin Lopez would get an opportunity and put it in the back of the net. And then from there, it just became a training drill. This was the most pure football that I have watched this season. Every attack that Barcelona were executing looked like it would, break through Newcastle. They completely put sword to throat in this situation. They were deadly, with masked Lewandowski scoring not one, but 2 goals. One came via a header from a corner, then the other was a beautiful 1v1 finish where he, feinted the goalkeeper, sent him, and then put it into that bottom left corner. But the assist for the goal was brilliant too, with Lamine Yamal picking up the ball from deep, driving at a defender, playing a ball through, and then Lewandowski, with time and space, he composes himself. In these situations, you're saying Lewandowski is more than likely going to finish it, especially if he missed earlier opportunities in the game, and he does so. And to top it off, in the 70th minute, Newcastle can't contain themselves. They want to get in on the action too, so they give the ball to the Barcelona players. Rafinha receives it, puts it into that corner, and it's now 8-3 on aggregate. A dominant performance that they will look to replicate when coming up against Atletico Madrid in the quarterfinals. And it's Atletico's game that we need to talk about next, because Tottenham, you know what? Let's put our hands up and say this. They did okay. They strolled into this game 5-2 down. At this point, what is the point? Just go home. But with previous iterations of Tottenham squads having this comeback gene within them, anything is actually possible. And despite Tottenham getting let off early, I think Atletico had a goal ruled out. They would get the first goal in the game via Kolo Muani. And then after that, these Tottenham players just puffed out their chests a bit and just started playing football. The likes of Archie Gray having moments, Xavi Simons having moments, Vicario pulling off some saves. Tottenham would get a big opportunity on that 34th minute, and if they had capitalized on it and scored, then there would have been a bunch more faith in this game for them to actually make a comeback. Because going into halftime with a 1-0 lead wouldn't be enough against this Atletico Madrid side. All it would take would be one mistake from Xavi Simons before an Atletico counter-attack. And with the ball eventually being played to Lookman on that left-hand side, he would look up and say, oh, Julian Alvarez is in the middle, let me pass across to him. Alvarez back to goal, turns, swivels, shoots, top corner.
Destroy him!
Yeah, this guy is ridiculously good. You know, you just watch his game solely and you just see the level above that he is to everyone on the pitch. That goal would make it 6-3 on aggregate, but Tottenham, it's not over yet. Because Xavi Simons answers back just a few minutes later. A brilliant goal whipped into that far right corner has just sparked some belief in the Spurs fan base. And they continue to charge at this Atletico Madrid side, with Pedro Porro having opportunities saved by the Atletico Madrid goalkeeper. Another goalkeeper, by the way, pulling out some amazing stops. I forgot his name. On the 68th minute, the ball would be played down the left hand side to Julian Alvarez, and honestly, again, I just had to speak about this moment because he's taking on, you know, Tottenham's entire defense. He's about to walk it into the back of the net and just about, you know, doesn't pick the right little angle to shoot at Vicario. It doesn't go in, but again, Julian Alvarez just a planet above everyone else. He's just in a different stratosphere. And then he's involved again with his corner leading to Atletico's second on the night. It's now 7-4 in aggregate, but still, these Tottenham players are showing fight. They would win a penalty late on with Xavi Simons putting the ball into the back of the net. And, you know, they were showing some passion, man. Tottenham, raise your heads high and continue in this manner for the rest of the season, and I guarantee you, you will stay up in the Premier League. It just seems like this might be the game that everything clicks. Igor Tudor finally getting his first win with this Tottenham side after, you know, a big result against Liverpool on the weekend. But of course, Tottenham are the only team that could win a game and still lose. You know what I mean? Like, they've won the game, but at what cost? You're not even going through. All the players are tired. Stamina bars are low. You got games to think about. You got relegation battles. So lock in ASAP. And from one English side to another, we have to talk about Liverpool that silenced the doubters, bringing a game that they were losing 1-0 back to Anfield and completely flipping the tie. And from the off, you could just tell that these Liverpool players didn't come to lose. Yeah, they chose violence. Inside 25 minutes, Liverpool get a corner and it's played to the edge of the box where Dominik Szoboszlai just places it into the corner of the goal. He's honestly been Liverpool's best player this season, and he stepped up in a big occasion once again. Wirtz would have an opportunity to double it 5 minutes later, but unfortunately he would miss. Then before half-time, Liverpool earned themselves a penalty via a Dominik Szoboszlai. Salah didn't score it anyway, so karma is real, I guess. But this missed opportunity wouldn't matter anyway, because in the 50th minute, Liverpool, just a bit of smooth transition, balls forward, ball across the box, and eventually Ekitike at that back post sticks it away. It was some football that we hadn't seen from Liverpool this season. They actually looked that they could play football finally. And then just 2 minutes later, this Liverpool squad are just coming at this Galatasaray backline like a pack of wolves. Gravenberch starting it, Wirtz flicking it to Mo Salah. Mo Salah with a volleyed opportunity. The goalkeeper would parry it and Gravenberch tidies it up, slips it into the back of the net, and now 3-0. Liverpool would then get another one via a dodgy cross from Frimpong, but it would get ruled out. But the best moment on the night had to be Mo Salah's goal, because in the 61st minute, Wirtz would give the ball to Salah, Salah would give it to Wirtz, Wirtz would do a little back heel into the path of Salah, and Salah, vintage Salah, would whip the ball top left corner. A finish that we have seen many times, but he has missed many times this season. He's finally put it into the back of the net, and it's jubilation. And for Liverpool fans, this win could mean a lot. You know, this could be the turning point in the season where you finally start to pick up a bit of momentum, go on a little streak in the Premier League, and finally finishing them Champions League spots too. Finally, we have to talk about Bayern winning 4-1 against Atalanta. 10-2 on aggregate, by the way. What is there to talk about? What is there to talk about? Seriously, like, this game was over before it even started. Put down the controller. Forfeit the game. You know, in FIFA, yeah, when I'm losing on career mode and it gets past 5-0, I'll just pause the game and forfeit, because at least the score will be 3-0.
F this, I'm sorry, there's no point. There's actually no point. I can't win. I played 3 games already, there's no point.
That's what Atalanta should have done. Stay in the dressing rooms. Forfeit the game. Don't come out. Because of course Bayern Munich were going to do what Bayern do. Harry Kane would score the first on the night via a penalty that was actually retaken because the goalkeeper came off his line the first time. Then in like the 54th minute, you know, Bayern Munich are just playing with their food, playing it on that right hand side. Eventually the ball would fall to Harry Kane, and he's, you know, wriggled out of a situation looking like he's turned into Lionel Messi, turning a defender and eventually putting the ball in the back of the net. He's put the ball in the back of the net with like 4 Atalanta defenders standing around him. This guy is genuinely a Ballon d'Or contender if Bayern Munich win the Champions League this season, and that's a fact. And it wouldn't take long for Bayern to add another goal into their catalogue. With these Bayern players pressing, Atalanta would succumb to the press. Luis Diaz would eventually find, I think it's Carl on that right hand side, and he would slip it into the back of the net. Then in that 69th minute, Bayern Munich, a quick counter, a quick transition, they play the ball over the top. It's Luis Diaz in a 1v1 scenario, and he just finishes it. A lovely, a beautiful, a succulent dink over the goalkeeper in slow motion. It's 4-0. Winning 10-2 on aggregate, we just have to look at some of these round of 16 fixtures and say, what is going on? Some of these scorelines were absolutely incredible, but it also just showed the levels between the elite clubs and the ones that are trying to get to that level. The squads that are going into these quarterfinals are actually some of the best that we've seen in the last 3 years. PSG going up against Liverpool, Real Madrid against Bayern Munich, Barcelona against Atletico Madrid, and of course Arsenal having probably the easiest tie of all of them going up against Sporting. But still, you know, these are very big games, and them quarterfinals are going to be a joy to cover. So you guys let me know if we should continue this series into the quarterfinals, and yeah, and of course if you want me to continue this, just show some love, and of course follow me on Instagram for any updates on the channel. Leave a like on this video, and of course stay safe, stay blessed, and peace.
Who lives in Stamford Hill or anywhere, right, will do a better job than drafting anyone from anywhere in the country.
Off me, we don't win those shot, bro. Call him off, try turn him off. In the sex, 3 man serving, no 3 fully band, we got burned off. Whenever we get a burner loss, we just couple next one, I go blast it off. Close to them, he got his earnings wrong. We just came OT, now shit that's wrong. P.Y. got smoke, no bong, and I'm trying to smoke, man, with this train, no songs. This jab been a real bad boy from young, I wanna have my rambo up as a loud cock. This bad beer than this with phones, she just keeps selling me, she wants see niners gone. Bando selling her, she can ride along, and if L's in the car, this ride is long. Like everyone's trapping and everyone's banging. I think I might just stop rapping. These 9 boys just jumped on the track. KMT, who gassed these fractions? They ain't done no blammings or splashings. What are they rapping? SJ, I ain't on no chance, man. Being verified, blue tick, fashion.